I noticed a couple of years ago when I was in a Toronto hospital, there was a poster board suggesting that to reminding women to have, or trans women to have breast cancer screenings. And I've seen those campaigns. I've seen campaigns lately that talk about, for menstrual product campaigns that talk about people who bleed, not women who bleed. Does this make sense? Sometimes I ask, and again, you have a good science background, are we sacrificing biology and science in the name of wokeism?
Absolutely. I mean, this doesn't only have negative effects for women and women's rights in terms of language around, say, women's bodies, and even being able to say that there are certain things that only women can do that trans women are not physically capable of. I think it also has negative repercussions for trans individuals, including trans women. So something like saying that trans women have a cervix, or that I've seen some trans activists saying this by transitioning that they now have a cervix, which is, again, not physically possible, or by saying that there are no differences between women born women or transgender women, or saying that transgender women, by transitioning, have female anatomy or are biologically female. There have been case studies of trans women who, even decades after transitioning, have prostate cancer. They stop screening because there's so much of this this misinformation, confusion out there. So I think the problem is if we start referring to women as, say, individuals with a cervix, some people unfortunately don't know what a cervix is. They won't know that this is something that they should be concerned about. And conversely, for trans individuals, I think their health will also suffer due to this messaging.
So that's a very interesting perspective, or an interesting point to bring up. So there have been cases in which, due to, I guess, the wrong assumption of various anatomy parts of trans women, that they weren't receiving the treatment that they ought to have.
Right. Well, I think part of it could also be the gender dysphoria aspect and not really wanting to recognize aspects of their body that are male or weren't male. But as well, now with the messaging that we're seeing, if people are being told by transitioning, suddenly you have the health concerns of the sex you identify as opposed to the sex you're born as, that's not true. And also, I would say for medical professionals, I hear all the time people are afraid to bring these concerns up to their patients. It's considered transphobic. Even if their patient isn't a transgender person, they're afraid that because of wokeism, even raising these differences or raising these concerns is going to get them labeled hateful.
And I think when folks enter a healthcare setting, what they want is objectivity. They want someone to lay it on the line, give them the truth, and let the patient make the best possible decisions for their healthcare with that information. But that's a very interesting point. If doctors are now feeling they have to self-censor due to political correctness or I guess the climate that exists around these issues right now, we could be very well harming many people in society, not just trans women, trans men, but those who identify as their own born with sex, correct?
Absolutely. And I mean, I always want to say that these messages that are being put forward by trans activists don't represent the everyday transgender person. Everyday trans people are horrified by what's happening. They're not in favor of this suppression of female language. They're not in favor, for the most part, of trans athletes dominating and destroying women's sports. So I always want to make a point of saying that, because I really fear for the backlash that's going to come against the community as a result of people saying, why are you referring to women as bleeders? Or why are you saying that we can't use the word mother? I mean, that understandably makes people very upset. And that's not what the average trans person wants. They just want to be able to transition, be respected, live their life, and be left alone.
So why don't we hear those voices? I mean, I think that's great that, and in my opinion, I'm happy to hear that this is not actually rampant within the community, but why don't we hear those voices? We seem to only ever get one narrative.
I think part of the issue is that it's, I wouldn't say collusion necessarily, but definitely media and institutions, scientific medical institutions, they all are pushing this one narrative that is being accepted by activists. And for people within the trans community, when they do speak up, they face the same hatred and vitriol from activists. I would say it's even worse. I mean, I'm not transgender. I deal with it pretty badly, but when I look at what trans people have to deal with for speaking up against their own community or activists within the community, it is absolutely horrific. It's horrible. They even get called transphobic themselves, which is
Wow.
absolutely insane to me.
Yes.
So it's really, I think, this larger intimidation that has just taken over. And also the fact that these ideas are being pumped into education. So
Okay,
that
I'm going to pause you there because I want to talk about that in just a moment when we come back.